a man who contacted me through Facebook, and I have been having a discussion regarding his 50-50 control of his children. He has 50-50 jurisdiction with an ex-wife over them, and he is bemoaning the state of the courts, especially juvenile court here in Hamilton County. And I tried to encourage him a little bit with some Latin phrases that are sort of the grounds of his problem, and not that they explain the problem, but they're sort of the grounds upon which the state operates as against families, and through juvenile courts and through guardian ad litems and the like, through the use of complaints, there is a great power raised against the family in Tennessee. Now, and he asked me if I had done much work on that, and had I written about city court, about juvenile court here with, I think, Judge Filial's, the judge there, Judge Bennett, and I said I hadn't, but that I knew through websites such as medicalkidnap.com that Tennessee has a wicked system, a militant system separating families. There are, according to Connie Reguly, an attorney in Nashville, I think a kind of a quote of about 7,000 children that always have to be sort of in the pipeline in some way or other, because when you go to a museum and you look at, say, a Giotto painting from the 1400s, you'll see there, and of course many other works of religious art, the halo over the apostles, let's say, or the Lord Jesus. Well, there's a kind of halo around the head of every child who is a target, or who comes into the benevolent view of a social worker by report or some kind of scandal mongering or secret claim made by telephone at the 800 number that so and so is a danger to her children, and her children are running loose, and so on, some kind of claim like that. And then down swoops the social worker, and standing behind her on your front porch, there's the police officer with his arms folded. And he's just kind of looking a little bored, but he's ready to spring into action. He's got all of his guns there in his ammo belt, his 3 magazines of, I guess, 40 caliber, and his armor plate and his taser, the very yellow taser handle there. He's ready for action. He's ready for combat. Okay, but there he is, ostensibly a peaceful figure, and the social worker is demanding access to your children, wants to inspect the house, wants to question your children. And you are not there, right? You're not there, but your wife is there, right? Or if you, my listener, are the woman who matters, your husband may be at home, and he's not. Of course, he doesn't listen to David Toulis, and doesn't read Nuganomics, so he's way behind on a lot of kind of simple things that we talk about here. Maybe you should have him subscribe. Well, divorce court has, of course, creates one set of problems, and the problem I'm describing here of the social worker at your door is another. But they both connect with family court and juvenile jurisdiction, and where things are done in secret, right? There are all kinds of secret proceedings there, because the children's names can't get out, because there's a concern for their future welfare. We don't want crimes. We don't want conflict connected with any particular child. So these are outside of the press claims, I suppose, upon judicial proceedings. The press should always be able to be there, and so this member of the press here, David Toulis, has not covered that jurisdiction, spending the past several months, actually since about January, on the traffic court problem that we are concerned about. But how is it? How do we have this system where we have thousands of children in foster care? They are usually worse off in foster care than they were with an abusive parent, and that is because there are reasons that I don't think I'm fit to describe today in detail. I have not done some fresh reading on this subject, but there are biological reasons that small children especially should not be taken from their parents. And older children are wrenched out of their familiar circumstances, their own home, right, and taken and sent sometimes hundreds of miles away, and the family ties, the legal ties as well, threatened or broken by the judge. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. Do call me if you have something in this direction. Maybe you, my listener, know more about this than I do, and maybe you can fill me in. Just tell me your story. That might be something that we can start with, putting a face on an issue that I'm going to get to. Okay, by God's grace, I will get to that issue. And though right now I'm working on the abuse of the transportation statute in Chattanooga, hoping to effect a reform in which the courageous one is not saying we need a new law, we need something new done, but the courageous one, the courageous mayor, Brent Lambert, for example, in East Ridge, says, we're going to obey the law. And when the law is narrow, as administrative notice has informed us, and as the statute informs us, and we're going to not over-enforce, we're not going to over-broadly enforce, we're going to enforce it as written, period. That's what we need to have in that venue. So in other venues, too, there are people who can bring about reforms, and they have to do it, I think, with my, I would like them to be able to do that with my encouragement, right? I'm David Toulis, and because I'm a deacon in the church, okay, I have, well, not right now, but I have been for many years a deacon in the church, in the Christian church. I have an eye for that reconstruction of society here in the Chattanooga area. Now, you're asking me, well, what's the secret here? Well, the secret, if you could call it that, is really a concept, and it's called Parens Patrie. And that Parens Patrie is a Latin term for the parent is the father. It is it's where the state claims the authority to regulate members of society who are helpless. That is, if you look up that on, or just say Google, what does Parens Patrie mean? It will say the government or any other authority regarded as the legal protector of citizens unable to protect themselves. And what's implied there, of course, is that you can't protect yourself. And so we have to be your protector. We are we're the parent, we're the father, and our claim pre-exists other claims, right? Our claim upon your children pre-exists yours because they are helpless. They are all vulnerable, right? You might commit a crime against that child. You might sexually abuse that child. And there's a presumption on the part of the state that those adults most proximate to a child may, because they're sinners, right? They may do something wicked. And therefore we have a pre-existing claim on every child, sort of by default, a default sovereignty. And that's why, because it does arise from the false claims of sovereignty by the modern corporate state, that I object to the idea of sovereignty at all. And I say, well, when I read the legal encyclopedias about states and jurisdiction in the Constitution, I object as a Christian against the claim that the state's sovereign. No, the state's not sovereign. The state is bound by God's law, and its authority comes in our custom here in this country. It comes from the people, right? The people delegate their authority to it through representation, right? Through the representative system. You could say the democratic Republican system. And when we have groupings of governments in view together, we call it a federated or federal system. That's federal means covenantal. It's a system of covenants among local, city, local, state, and federal governments. They're all in a covenant together. Feudus, right? It's a feudal. It comes from feudalism. Where the parties in a particular area, say along a bend in the river, they have an agreement of protection and allegiance and sustenance, and all the farmer gives, he's protected, right? There's the agreement. He has the land sort of in not in allodium, not fully his, but he has the land it's partly his, and he has the right to the proceeds of it, but it's not his. And he produces, and the Lord up in the manor behind the stone walls with the pennants fluttering in the wind at the top. He is the protector, and he will make sure that when there are roving bandits come near, that he musters a force to fight them off. Right? That's the arrangement. That's the feudalism or federalism that we have today, and so. We have limits on government, and we have the limits, and taught to us by Christianity. We have limits on government because God is the governor and God is the king, and all government, all kings are but silly vassals in light of God's prior claims upon them. And so, what Parens Patrie is the doctrine that brings grief to families all across Tennessee. And I admit that I have not read a lot in this. I've not done really any legal reading in this area. But maybe with your encouragement or maybe your help, maybe if you call me, why don't you call me today here on the David Tula Show and fill me in on your story? Your story, I'm sure, is worth being heard. And though I won't promise that I can solve your problem today, I think the fact that we can hear about it together, you, me, and the other listener, right? We can hear your story, and so we can start the kind of not say the healing process. I know that sounds kind of schmaltzy, but there is something to that. So the main doctrine that we want to just mention to you right now is Parens Patrie, the prior claim. And I'm thinking that there's a way of seeing how that claim is established and how that claim can be strengthened by the state. Okay, and how can you? So the question is, all right, there are ways of strengthening it, but how can we weaken that claim? And here's what I want to suggest: it is to have a marital union, to have your marriage not under statute but under common law. Now that simply means having a common law marriage rather than a marriage by permission. And it's a great topic, and it's very local economy here. This is, you want to know what this show's about? Well, the name is David Tulis, and I argue for local economy every day here at 92.7 FM and 95.3 FM HD4, the high definition digital. Graph out our high definition digital channel on 95.3 HD4, and you would see it's so high fidelity that there'd be one graph line that would show my Adam's apple bobbing up and down my throat. And that's how men think. Okay, I'm a guy, and men are gross like that, but it is such a rich delivery system, digital radio, that you could graph out my voice to that detail. It's so rich, so comprehensive, so all-encompassing. Digital radio, only here at 95.3 FM HD4. Nougat Radio, you report and the world decides. Parens Patrie, how does the state amass that? Well, it amasses it very quietly and by your consent. You consent to yield your right to marry, and you go to the state government in Nashville through the marriage statute, which has been overturned, by the way. The marriage statute is still overturned, and yet we still use it for getting marriage licenses. How does that work? How does that work? Does that not just strike you as kind of an insanity? I mean, the statute's been overturned in its entirety by the Supreme Court in the queer ruling, Obergefell versus Hodges, 2015. And here we are 3 years later, and our children are going to get marriage licenses. Does it make any sense to you? I don't know. When I think about that, I just have to kind of shake my head, and I just don't get it. And well, that's just because we're ignorant. We are ignorant about what marriage licenses bring, even though the system's been overturned and the sex, the male and female sex, deleted from its provisions. Maybe it still lives, right? Maybe it still lives in a kind of hollowed out, sunken-eyed form there on the books. With the life that real sex brings between a man and woman, loving sex and marriage, that kind of life is sort of deleted from it, drained from the structure, the legal structure of marriage, and you have two hairy ones going at it, and that is truly death itself. Well, marriage is a right. You have your son and your daughter have a right to marry the man or woman of their choice. Your son has a right to marry the woman of his choice, and your daughter has a right to consent to a marriage proposal from the man of her choice. And there are 5 or 6 legal requirements of what constitute a marriage, and that those can all be met at common law. Now, you want to know what those are? Okay, the number is 800-8949. Maybe you know the answer, 800-8949. But the elements of a marriage are consent, capacity. Consent means the ability to say it. Capacity is the proper age and mental capacity. Consummation, which means sex, consuming consummation, reaching the acme of human existence, right, in making love. That's consummation. Cohabitation, meaning living together, and then the thing called holding forth. That is to say, you hold forth as a married couple. We are married before God and the state and all men. And usually the woman, in deference to and love to her husband, takes his name. And that's a very good custom to have. Very good custom to have. And so those are the 5 ways that marriage is established. When you have a marriage under statute, you shortcut that whole process. You say, well, we don't have to worry about those things. We don't have to worry about what the law requires. We'll just have a sort of substitute, which is a piece of paper, the magic paper from the magic source, that if it weren't there, if it weren't for its permissive, hallucinational power, we could not marry. If we did not have the state to unite us, we couldn't do it. We just simply would not have the power within us. We would not have the love, the ardor, the strength to unite ourselves in holy matrimony. We couldn't do it. And so, because we are incapable, we are incompetent, we go to the state for permission. And that's what a marriage license is. But what it does is this: gives the state jurisdiction over the fruit of the marriage. Think about that. If you can't marry without the state's permission, the state then is the moving party. The fruit of your union, you make love and have children, or let's say you make love and have a child. That child is the fruit of something that the state created, right? And so the state has, you might say, an a priori claim on that child as a piece of property. It's not, when the state makes the claim on your child as property, I'm not making the state look bad, because you have a property right in your child. You have, my listener, have a property right in your wife, right? That is a property right. And there's nothing wrong by saying that. I'm not making the state look bad just because you don't know what that means. It does have a property right, and you have a property right. But how great is that property right? I'd say it's very limited. And let me back up. I would say that no, the state does not have a property right in your children, but you do, and your wife does, or your husband does, and you and your mate have property rights in each other. To sustenance, consort, there are all kinds of property rights that you have in each other. Now, the state also has authority over your children, I suspect. And my reading in this is diverse and pretty deep, but I'd say I'm not entirely convinced. It would have authority over your children through the fact that you enter into the stream of commerce and go to the Federal Department of Commerce and register your child through the birth certificate system. And certification of a child's identity nowadays, where the spelling of the child's name is not what you intend, okay, the spelling is changed through the styling of the name, the styling of the letters. There's an identity given to that child that is a corporate identity. It is you could say it's an avatar. Some people call it, some in the you might say the patriot community call it the straw man, and that's created at the time that you enter that child as a kind of guarantor, perhaps for the national debt. Who knows? Guarantor for the filling of the ranks of the army, if there's a draft ever. That child becomes a kind of property of the national power. And there's not this is a reading in court literature, and perhaps some sort of fantasizing legal literature that I've read that makes this it is a suggestion. Okay, it's not, I'm not saying this is a fact, just a suggestion, but they tend to, this analysis, I think, tends to have some reason in other legal material that is there, like business lawsuits and all kind of contract lawsuits that end up in courts of appeal opinions that you can read online or in a law book or through LexisNexis. Parens Patrie, it is the thing that the state exercises, and through school, through public school, through really any school, there's a similar doctrine called in loco parentis, where the state is in the place of the parent, and here, when states come for your children, it is in the place of the parent. And because you are incompetent and your children are incompetent and needy, the state makes a claim upon them. And that's why the officers at the door, lying to your wife, you need to know what to tell her. You need to know the main point about that encounter that you need to have and tuck away, and make sure you talk with your sweetheart about this, that she should not open the door, first of all. And she should talk through the window and say, well, you have to show me a warrant for anything you want to see, or anybody you want to look at or see personally. You have to have a warrant. Do not come in on my property. Get off my property now. I'm ordering you off my property. You have no business here. Get off my property, or I will call Sheriff Jim Hammond. And he will have a deputy come and remove your blue bottom from my sidewalk and from my curb. That's what you have to do. There is no authority without a warrant, and it matters even even if the party receiving that knock at the door is your wife. It matters that the clerk there is smiling and friendly. The warrant makes it happen, and without the warrant, there's not a reason to enter. Do not open the door. Do not consent to any visit. Do not, because if you do, you are going down a dismal, dark path strewn with vines and roots and mud and puddles. And over there, an alligator. David Toulis, Nuke Radio.